everybody hear me? There we go. Matin va, hula dinja, Kimera Hashiv, Ishmisha Siobhán. Luckily, I won't do the entire thing in Gaelic. That is the obligatory introductions. So thank you for inviting me here today. I am going to talk about the Lost Inverlael project. I am rather short, late 30s, with shoulder-length curly brown hair and a green top. So I am going to talk about our Lost Inverlael project, which was a community archaeology project in its infancy. And that's what it started out. And what it ended up was something that I don't even think we could potentially even have considered it was going to be quite as big or quite as influential within the museum itself. We are a very small independent museum that is mostly volunteer run, which means that it can be incredibly difficult to identify the areas that we need to do better in, because when it's volunteers who have put a lot of effort and a lot of passion into what they've done, trying to say maybe we should do it a different way can be really challenging. And this is really, especially when it comes to topics such as tone, and the kind of vibes that the museums give off, because these are so kind of intangible to lots of different people, and quite subjective. So this is where we felt that Lost Inverlael really, really improved our kind of standing. We were, as we still are, a great small museum that's got a beautifully curated collection and a beautiful building. We're in a Grade A listed parliamentary Telford church, which is a lovely building, not ideal for a museum, but that's a different story. But we really struggled to connect with the community. We catered to a very dedicated, small section who were very, very passionate about the local heritage, but for 20 years didn't really feel the need to come outside of that within the community. So we kind of identified that, and we really wanted to kind of change that and be a little bit more inclusive. We also had, and we will admit quite happily, that we had an awful reputation of not being particularly child friendly. And that was partly because we had an exhibition at the time where everything was on display. There was lots of things, there was lots of folders, lots of information, and it wasn't really accessible to anybody, but especially to young kids. In 2017, we had a redisplay, which kind of addressed most of that, but the reputation kind of stayed. So that's prior to the project. And while the Lost Inverlael's kind of outcomes were never really to address that issue within the museum, now we're sitting 5 years later with a very different vibe and a very different reputation, and we can probably look back and see a lot of that is to do with Lost Inverlael. Oops. Oh no. Oh, there we go. Oh, too far. So Lost Inverlael essentially was a community archaeology project. It was funded mostly by Historic Environment Scotland through the Archaeology Fund. We also had a significant input from Bord na Gaelic, who we managed to employ a Gaelic development officer with that, and they worked with the museum and part as an Inverlael rep. We had a couple of events that were funded through the Year of Scottish Stories, through MGS, and our archaeologists that we used were Highland Archaeology Service, who are fabulous. If you need any archaeologists in the Highland area, Lynn and Lachlan would be more than happy to speak to you. So instead of me talking too much about what the project actually was, I am going to let a short video give you the feel of it.
Hi, I'm Lachlan McKeggie. I'm the archaeologist who's been helping out at the Lost Inverlael project. This is Baron. You come and sit here, Baron. We've been asked to do this by Ullapool Museum, and it's a brilliant project. It's a lovely thing to be involved in. It's an exciting place and a really lovely, beautiful part of the world to work in. And what's particularly nice is getting to work with the volunteers. Partly, it's good fun to teach people new skills, and it's interesting. You're outdoors, you're having a good time. But what's particularly special here is quite a few of the people working with us, their ancestors are the people who are living on this site. So one of the guys today, we think one of his ancestors was actually the miller, and here we are sitting in what we think is the mill. So it's amazing to be able to do that. I mean, that's just something that doesn't happen in archaeology usually. So yeah, that's amazing.
The only thing I found that I like and the most is this rock right here.
That's a good rock. Was it shiny when you found it?
Yeah, and the back of it's shiny.
So that was a wee film done for us by Will Hall, who I think is actually a kind of nature filmographer, but he wanted to come along to do some work with us and just happened to coincide with the second of the 3 digs. But as you can see, we're already starting to develop that little bit more friendly atmosphere just through these films. So Berin is Lynn Lackland's youngest child. The rock specialist is my middle child. And throughout the entire excavations, I think we probably had every single kid from the Ullapool Primary School out at the site at some point. So as a very quick rundown of what was all included, some of this we will go into a bit more depth, some of it we won't. So we had 3 weeks of community archaeology surveying on a massive site, and it's about 3.5 kilometres long, and we only did a very small scratch on the surveying. A lot of that surveying was done by the first year group at Ullapool High School, and the rest was done by a community volunteer group. Then we did 3 weeks of archaeology excavations, so there was 3 sites that were picked. There was a suspected croft house, there was the mill, and then the last one was one of the biggest buildings that was on the site, which was arguable of what we believed it would be, but I think the prevailing thought was it might be the taxman's house. We had a community ceilidh at the end of all the excavations as a kind of roundup for it all, where all the finds were on display. We had some music. We'll go into a little bit of that in a second, and a bit of a kind of cultural exchange. We did excavation workshops, which were where all the finds were brought into the museum. We washed them, catalogued them, numbered them, and all that sort of stuff. So the community did that themselves. We also developed a Minecraft game, which we'll go into in more details again. We did a whole load of archaeology activities aimed at primary school kids. Again, we'll look at them, as well as an 8-episode podcast series called Hidden in Plain Sight. We also got some music commissioned by Rumac, who was scurrilously denied his place on Britain's Got Talent on Saturday night. But you will be able to see what he can do at the end of this. There's an academic article that's about to come out about the importance of looking at post-medieval clearance sites. And we also had more creative elements of a portrait exhibition called Portraits of the Glen. So we had a lot of issues, mainly because we decided to launch the project in March of 2020, which, looking back, was not ideal. So we went through the entire lockdown. The issues around that were mainly regarding kind of lockdowns and restrictions. The scheduling was all pushed back 6 months. Luckily, we'd already had a kind of 6 months on it, or it would have been a year we would have to push back. But a lot of that rescheduling really helped us develop more of these kind of side projects that came out of the entire kind of umbrella project itself. We also had to deal with some really sensitive topics. The clearance history is really difficult. And when we're talking about people's descendants and ancestors of the same site, it can be incredibly difficult to kind of disassociate the kind of emotional response that you have, and not always what happened marries up with that kind of emotional attachment to it. So we had to deal with all of that. A perfect example was we did a blog piece for Dig It on this particular topic last summer, and that is the most engaged post of the last couple of years, and it's entirely not because I wrote it, unfortunately. It is because it's a clearance topic and it engages a lot of comments and a lot of feedback. And again, another kind of symptom of COVID was the budgets. Funding streams closed, the museum income dropped because we were closed, which meant that we couldn't supplement anything even if we wanted to. And then when we did open up, all the fees had increased. So it was some real difficult times throughout it. But these are the good bits, and they're the most expressive. The Portraits of the Glen was an exhibition that we put together that was photographed by his name's Jim Dunn, and he was the photographer for Glasgow Museums. He's only just retired a couple of months ago. But he's got a real passion for kind of documentary photography. So all the people that were photographed as part of this project were descendants of the people who were cleared from the area that we were digging. And this was probably the most important and the most successful in reaching streams that we didn't have any kind of touch with before, because the kind of main idea of this part of the project was you didn't need any museum interaction. It was literally word of mouth, and such as Granny has done this, so yous are all descendants, do you want to go get your photo taken? They are really provocative, really striking portraitures, and I think there was about 28 done in total, and we did a week-long exhibition at Antala Solish in Ullapool. We also had another element, and I've just realised when I was looking at this earlier that the name of the podcast isn't on this slide, so it's called Hidden in Plain Sight. And if you scan the QR code, it will take you to the website to download them if you wished. And it was an 8-part docudrama radio episode thing that turned into podcasts, but they were initially put out along all of the local Highland radio stations, and they had one episode every week for 8 weeks that came out. And we took stories from the local area through a multitude of different eras, and we had a lot of really good interactions with partners on it. So the writer for a lot of the drama elements of them was Chris Doolan. We had Sir Tom Devine, who was one of the experts. We had a few other experts like Dr. Elizabeth Ritchie, Dr. Derek Bratt, all as experts on the podcast series. Most of the actors for the dramatisation elements came from the UHI drama department. And we also had David Heyman, who very kindly came and did one of the episodes. The kind of intro and outro for the entire series was the music that we commissioned by Rory through the entire thing. So we've managed to keep that continuity through the entire. So while it was for a different thing, we've managed to get it in for this. This is possibly my favourite, and we've got loads of different stories behind it, but it's definitely my favourite element of the entire project. One of everybody else's favourites is the Minecraft game that we commissioned. So we worked with Adam Clark, aka Wizard Keen, if anybody has Minecraft-aged children. He is a Minecraft YouTuber who works with Stampy Longnose and Squishy and all them doing Minecraft tutorials on YouTube. So we had inputted all the map data from the area that we were digging and researching into a Minecraft game, and we have created a year in the life of a Highlander. And that was worked with by the class Coig Agus Shia from Ullapool Primary School. They all created their own characters, as you can see here, and then created narratives for their characters in Gaelic, which have all been uploaded. So you can wander about the game and interact with villagers who they won't speak Gaelic back to you because we never got to add the audio in, but all the writing that will come back to them is Gaelic writing, and you can read it in Gaelic. But another wee video that Adam did for us probably highlights it a little bit better.
Welcome to a journey through the seasons. As we travel through time, witness the changing landscapes and the traditions that define this community. Spring arrives with a burst of life. The village awakens with shores rich in kelp and fields ready for sowing. It's a time of renewal where every task, from gathering kelp to preparing the soil, weaves into the larger tapestry of village life. Then comes summer, our season of abundance. Long daylight days, fueling activities from cattle herding in the lush hills to the busy hands in the dairy huts. Cutting peat and fishing expeditions prepare for the coming winter. As the leaves turn, autumn whispers of preparation and change. Harvesting corn and the drover's journey to distant markets mark this bountiful yet fleeting time. It's a season of hard work and community spirit. With the arrival of winter, a serene calm descends. Villagers gather around the hearth, celebrating traditions like Samhain and Hogmanay. It's a time for reflection, honouring the past and preparing for the future. From the vibrant spring shores to the wintry village square, our journey through the seasons in this Minecraft world captures the essence of a community bound by tradition and the rhythm of nature.
So some of the stuff that was used.
Welcome to a journey through the season.
Do it again. Some of the stuff that was used in that was the actual surveying maps, and they overlaid the placement of some of the buildings with the actual surveys to try and get as accurate a depiction as we possibly could. Part of the issue with the Inverlael site is that it is now about 80% covered in forestry trees, which wouldn't have been there at the time. So trying to visualise the entire area is quite difficult without nearly 100-year-old trees in the road. So it was really useful for us to really get the first, as much as it's Minecraft, to get a first kind of idea of how it could have looked then. We also developed, and this was actually from the archaeologists themselves, the Lost Ark activities. These were done by Lynn McKeggie, but we, because of our input from Borden Gaelic and the Gaelic Development Officer, we managed to get them translated as well into Gaelic. So there's whole 6 workbooks, essentially, with a number of different activities that meant that we were able to create a kind of dual language project as much as we possibly could. And one of the things that we've kind of developed since, throughout the entire project, but we've really taken on board in kind of future stuff, was our online accessibility. It was really important because of our diaspora, that people could access it properly. And we decided to break rule number 1 from any social media manager will tell you, is don't make its own Facebook account. But we did. And this was only a screenshot taken a couple of weeks ago. So we had 500, nearly 600 followers on that account. And it was really just to make sure it was more accessible and it was more searchable. So if anybody put in Lost Inverlael or Ullapool, then the Facebook page come up instead of getting lost in our own Facebook accounts. We then developed the talks, which kind of brought out the themes of the whole project with people that were involved in the project. So Kevin was our grants manager at HAS. Holly was a first-year PhD student who came along for the digs. I think she's just submitted, but her work is all on the seaweed industry and the kelp industry in the Highlands. And Darach looks at whisky in the Highlands. So he was an archaeology PhD student who's finished now, and he was looking at one of our illicit whisky stills that we found during the surveys. So the legacy of the project, and I think even just from the wee things that we've put out on this presentation, that we're kind of changing how we approach projects. We aren't quite as stuffy. We're a bit more relaxed. We're hopefully a bit more engaging. It's a friendly atmosphere and it's accessible to any age, no matter whether you're school kids or whether you were older in the community. This project had absolutely something for you and you could engage with it at any point. These are all the projects or the types of things that we are now looking at developing through projects. This finished last year, but anything we're doing now is based on the legacy and the good work and the goodwill that we did through the last 4 years, and we can build up our reputation again and make it a more entirely community orientated instead of just a part of the community. And thank you very much. And it's a little bit of music by Rooney. So this is called Ghosts of Balblair.